Good evening and welcome to tonight's Fireside Chat. I'm Elayne Grace and I am CEO of the Actuaries Institute. And tonight we are broadcasting live here from Sydney, Australia. The topic for tonight's Fireside Chat is to ask the question, where is artificial intelligence taking us? And I'm very excited to have joining us Lee Yearsley, founder and CEO of aKin, a public benefit AI company with its own foundation model. Welcome, Lee.
Thank you.
And we're getting her 2 days ahead of her giving a TEDx Sydney talk, so we're very privileged tonight. So this is a hybrid event, and we have a live audience here, and we are live streaming via the Institute's YouTube channel. I have a series of questions to ask of Lee before we throw open to the audience to ask your questions. We will, of course, try and make the session as interactive as possible, so I would encourage all those joining via live stream, please pop your questions into the chat as soon as they come into your brain. Our team will pass them on to me and I can ask Lee on your behalf. Obviously, we might not get through them all, but we'll try and do as many as possible. So without further ado, Lee. So to provide some context before we dive into a very complex topic, given your huge experience, please can you give us a brief overview of what 20 years in the AI field has looked like for you?
Yeah, it's a bit more than 20 actually. When I was 12 years old, my dad drove me through 2 days of war-torn Africa to go see Star Wars, and I thought, wow, imagine if we could build like a better version of ourselves, you know, something that was kinder and just thought about things a bit better. So I joined the computer club when I was 13 and I started coding. Now, we ended up emigrating to South Africa, and it wasn't just racist, it was sexist. So I tried to get into computer science and coding, and I literally got told by the dean, he said, lady, you can apply if you like, but there's no girls in here. So I didn't get into computer science. I studied medicine for a while, and then I actually ended up studying education as my undergrad. So I built an education franchise. I learned about how humans think, how humans use symbolic reasoning, how we do adaptive learning, how we live in conjunction with our environment and evolve epigenetically. And that's been interesting because it's meant to build very orthogonal AI, quite ahead of its time, and quite interesting systems that are more sentient and more empathic. So my first, I'd call it AI now. We didn't call it AI at the time because it was kind of embarrassing to be in it. But 2000, 2005, I built a search engine from Codebase Zero. We got a federal government grant. It was using AI to basically figure out who you were based on how you behaved. So we didn't just look at keywords. We went, well, are you typing really fast? Or you went to page 2. You're probably an effortful thinker, or, you know. And we would dynamically rank your results and adapt to you on the fly. So we had about 6 million users, but Google got funded a lot. So I thought, okay, and turned it into a platform, licensed it to Yahoo, Fairfax, Baidu, and that went public on the ASX. I left around the time it went public. The board wanted to take a different direction to me, and I was very technically focused. So I thought I'd leave, start a new company, took every cent I made and thought, what am I going to do? I'm going to go back to what I've always wanted to do. So I decided to start an AI company in 2005. It's like 6 years before Siri, way before generative AI. And we just hacked everything together out of the bedrock. Like, we had to code everything. There was nothing out there. And we got a federal government grant. We said, what we want is we want to democratize AI. We want a one-click AI. You should just go, there's your data. There's your job in the world. That's where you live. Go. We never got to one click. The fastest we ever did an enterprise deployment was 12 hours straight because we let the client loose on the back end and they broke it and we had to rebuild it. But we got pretty far because 8 years later, IBM acquired that company. Yeah. By the time they acquired us, I'm not permitted to talk about it or what we did afterwards, but at the time of acquisition, we had about 26,000 developers using the platform, built it right here in Australia. We had about 6 Fortune 100 companies, a number of large banks, 2 of the biggest insurance companies in the US, health insurance, tech help desk. And what all of those shared is they were high complexity, high volume. AI was not a thing. And I thought to myself, everyone's going to think these are silly little bots. These are human level cognition. And we were hooking them deep into analytic systems. What do we use every day? How can we prove out that this can do everything a human could do? So I deliberately went into big complex areas. We only worked with clients that had like 3,000 people in their call center or more. And we sent live the very first interactive AI for a bank in the world ever. In Australia, National Australia Bank. We chased that up with Westpac deployment, Standard Chartered. I moved to America and went from there. So it was great heady times. You know, the most common objection I got is, didn't you know AI is dead? And I got that about search as well for about 3 years. And I'd get, but no one wants to talk to these. You know, what's the point? People want to talk to humans. And that's the thing, people don't really want to talk to other humans. You know, we don't have a relationship with enterprises or companies. Everyone wants to have a relationship with their customers, but they don't really want a relationship with you. Yeah. They want to get on with their life. So we really, if an AI executed well, not only does a lot of frontline heavy lifting, but really gets into the zeitgeist of free-form, unstructured interaction and figures it out, you know, gives back beautiful analytics. You get into the heads of what's happening, where processes are breaking down, you know, where things can be improved. So what that company started out called My Cyber Twin. It was really hard to do enterprise sales with a name like My Cyber Twin. But we started out pure consumer. You know, we're on social media. You could just build one. You could do anything. We've got tons of data. And the first bank sale was particularly challenging. I'm going on a little bit, but
no, it's great to hear that.
Yeah, no,
yes,
we walked in, and I won't name the bank, but there's like 20 people in the room, the head of all channels and the head of this. I thought, okay, and I said, we think we can do this. And they said, well, what have you built before? And we said, well, we built a perfect girlfriend for a media company. And they went, oh, and I said, that's harder because it's freeform. It's open dialogue. Like, you know, just look at the back end. Look how beautiful it is. And to their credit, they gave it a whirl. Yeah. So where was I? So it was great. What we were really good at, though, was tooling. And the best compliment I ever had was an IBM or one of these veterans with like 10 million patents going, nice tooling. And I said, thank you. And what we were essentially able to do is move into a novel situation, go, right, what are we trying to achieve here? Maybe we're trying to achieve free-form interaction. Maybe we're trying to figure out an audience. Maybe we're trying to do deep analytics and integrate it with some other, you know, financial system. Okay, let's hybridize it. Let's glue stuff together. Let's say this is the rules engine or the traffic manager. Let's use generative AI, or let's use not, or yet let's use very structured systems. So we could throw systems together pretty rapidly. We had a lot of pre-trained templates, but we were really obsessed about optimization. You know, what are the outcomes we're trying to achieve and how rapidly could we get there? And I think that was surprise number one was this. It was staggeringly easy to reach and outperform human beings.
And add value, yeah.
No, outperform humans, like tier one humans. You know, humans are buggy. We have good days and bad days. We like some people, we don't like others.
Not good after lunch, I hear.
No, we're constrained by the biological brain pan that we live in. And an AI is just going to keep optimizing and get better and better and better and better at something. We would remember, you know, 1,200 bits of information about someone just to help them get a mortgage, you know, let alone be a perfect girlfriend. That was impossible. So I'm having a bit of a go here. But so, you know, basically what I learned is this. People are less distant to these than we realize. They're more willing to just open up to them. They get better and better and better. But I also learned that you have to be really thoughtful about what you're optimizing for, you know, because you can amp it up. Like we'd optimize for household debt and we'd double it. You know, we'd optimize for eating more potato chips and we'd double it. Drinking more beer, you know, anything. And the flip side of that, you can also optimize for, you know, helping a population behave better or get better. Then basically after IBM, I worked deep in the labs for a while because I'm one of the inventors and I'm a bad coder, but I'm a good architect. And then I moved into running Watson Life, and then they had me open up developer relations for the West Coast. So that was interesting in a huge organization like that.
It must be amazing having spent so long working on this, believing in it, not only being able to actually achieve it and build it, but actually convince people that you're going to deliver value and optimize and actually, for the rest of the world to be going, oh my God, I get it now, you know, and now even to get the challenge of humans going, oh, what? can do better than me in the confrontation.
Yeah, it's very weird because for me everything seems a little bit boring. People go generative. I'm going, yeah, it's like 6 years old. You know, what are you talking? Oh, okay, everyone's worked that out now. You know, so we're in what's called wave 3 AI. We're a little bit.
Yes.
You know, I live so far in the future that if I'm walking on the street, someone has to hold my hand because you know, there's cars flying over here and I walk into the road. So yeah, it's interesting.
So tell us a little bit about aKin and your focus areas there.
Sure. Yeah, so I actually retired after IBM. It's the holy grail of being an entrepreneur, but it's weird. It's like you're sitting on the riverbank and you're picking all these daisies and the river's going by and there's all these boats and there's this thing and you're just sitting there like, okay, I have another daisy, you know. And, you know, so what brought me back is this: I'm not done with AI. I did think there was going to be another revolution coming. And I also don't like the kind of world we're going to end up with. I want to build a different version of the world.
Yep.
And this is it. I believe that more than half, we think of AI as going off to you know, a generative AI system, having a little chat or generating a picture or doing a bit of a dabble here. It's not.
It's not.
It's
profound.
In everything. Like if you used a map to get here, you're looking at the map, it's looking back at you. There's an AI there. It's reading your emotions. Your search results are a little bit different the next day. If you know, slump in front of the TV and watch Netflix on a Friday night instead of going for a walk, that's AI. You know, we think we have choice. It's everywhere. It's everything already. And that's going to get amplified. So I think it's going to be making more than half of our decisions. And what we're doing with capitalism, we're optimizing for consumption, for addiction. If we
for great marketing.
Yeah, this girlfriend character, we had 5% of people would spend all their waking hours with it. They'd literally say, I'm not leaving the house because you're perfect. And I looked at this, I thought, that's terrible. You know, we manipulated populations at a mass scale, and we're doing that, and capitalism rewards that. So aKin has this dual thesis. The one side of it is that AI is going to evolve. And we'll probably talk about that in a minute. Like we're sitting in a 30-year-old paradigm right now, which is throwing a lot of data and compute at it. But if you took the compute that it takes for your watch to say hello, and you put it in your brain, you'd melt your cortex. So we're doing something more elegant, and there's something out there. AI is going to evolve. The flip side of that thesis is the whole economy is going to change. And we're going to have AI that are personal, that understand us, that are intimate to us, they're like another us. And they'll take care of all the stuff we don't feel like that report on a Monday, or, you know, booking the vacation, or finding the perfect human being, or whatever it is, and we'll just get on with whatever it is we feel like. So, you know, the change is no less significant than the Industrial Revolution.
No, this is such an existential point for us.
Yeah.
And it's going to be so easy for AI to do this, that the guardrails we put up, like, I mean, I believe that's the difficulty, isn't it? Working out the guardrails of what do we want it to achieve, or how do we want it to direct it or limit it. That's where the real challenge for the human race is.
Correct.
And to make sure that there's enough people interested and diverse enough to deal with that. So.
Correct, yeah.
Okay, so let me ask you another question. So theoretical physicist Michio Kaku, co-founder of string field theory, caused a bit of a stir in the last week when he said, current AI is a glorified tape recorder. His view being that large language models are really just taking snippets of what's on the web created for humans, splicing it together and passing it off as if it created these things. And people are saying it's human-like. So what are your thoughts on this take about, is it just taking stuff from the past and regurgitating it, or, you know?
I absolutely agree with him. I mean, we're working on, I think that's a question coming up about wave 3A, what's after generative, that's more adaptive. But, you know, essentially what's happening, we've had 2 waves of AI so far. The first wave is called top-down reasoning. Now, what happened in the 50s and 60s, everyone, there's a revolution coming, we're building thinking machines, they're going to take over humanity in the next 10 years. And huge piles of money were thrown at it, and people went out because it was all new. And they went out to speak to psychologists and teachers and all sorts of cross paradigms, and they went, how do humans think? And well, it turns out humans often think symbolically. We do symbolic reasoning. We go, well, this is a cup, and this is a cup, and cup holds liquid. So if you teach it that this is a cup and that's liquid, liquid goes in cup, you get a new object along, you go, I think the liquid's going to go in that. Now that's beautiful, okay? We still actually use it today. If you caught an aeroplane, it's probably using some sort of symbolic reasoning, but it's brittle. You have to hand train it, and it breaks down. So if you take the same robot or AI and you put it in front of the ocean, you go, what are you going to do? It's going to go and melt. So we had our first AI winter. Wasn't that AI stopped, but that the hype cycle was so big that it crashed. And statistical reasoning is the second wave. That was around then as well, but there just wasn't enough compute power to get it right. So the first wave can reason, but it doesn't learn. You have to tell it everything. The second wave is statistical learning. Now, we still historically have such a schism between these two fields. There's stories in the 60s that the Noam Chomsky and the linguists and the Symbolic guys would walk in a conference room, they'd see the statistical guys, they'd look at each other, they'd turn their backs and walk to the other side of the room. And then the one very famously said, every time I fire a linguist, my AI gets better, And the statistical guys started winning, but it means we've never really brought the fields together. And that's not the answer either. So some statistical learning, just going, here's your data. You don't care what it means, but here's a cup and another one, another one, another one, another one, another one, and a million of them. And most of the time they have water in them. So there's no reasoning. It's not you're not going to throw it in a novel situation, but if it has enough data, it can infer. Now, generative, I agree. What we've had up until now is these ensemble, if we're talking to a big client, it's ensemble AI. If we talk in the lab, it's Franken architecture, where you basically take a rules and you go, and you throw out a brute force learning, you go, do this, but it's just doing what you think it's going to do. Now, humans believe that.
Yeah.
That's why I do agree with that second part of that phrase.
Yeah.
Humans accept this. They will fall in love. They will talk to it. They will believe it's real. They'll anthropomorphize. They'll call it her, she, so we are wired to accept this, and that's why they're so persuasive. But they are regurgitating. Now, up until now, what we've done is we've gone, okay, here's your rules. Let's use machine learning to do what's called discriminative AI. So we're going, here's a bunch of these. What's the label?
We need props.
Yeah. What's the label?
Yeah.
It's a receptacle. Or it's a cup. And now, hey, you're going to learn some more, stretch your brain, do some connotation. Yeah. It's a receptacle. So you're given data, you're given features, and you discriminate, and you say this is a label. So someone comes along, you go, hello, and they go, oh, that means hello. You go along and say hello for us.
Hello.
Yeah, great accent. And I bet you had a hard time with the early days of speech engines. Yeah. But we get enough of that.
Definitely.
Yeah, but we get enough of that data and we go, oh, yeah, I got it, it's hello. Yeah. Okay. Now, all that generative is doing, so you're saying, what is the probability? This is discriminative. This is up until 5 years ago. What is the probability of this being labeled a receptacle? It's about 90%. What's the probability of this being a receptacle? Nothing. Well, actually, it holds my foot, so, theoretically. Now, generative is just the flip of that. It's going, here's a label, receptacle. Generate me one. Okay, I'm going to look at all this data. I'm going to average it and spit it out. So it's regurgitating that magical, generative AI that's populating stuff. It's looking at the average. If 1 million people were given this question and throwing these words together, what's the general regurgitation that all the humans or all the data I have on the planet would spew out in response to this? So I absolutely agree it's not thinking.
Which we'll probably cover later, but that's more also then leads us into that whole thing about, therefore, it's the data you feed it, which is the responses, and that's that whole responsibility of what data are we training it on? And is that really reflective of the society where we want to go?
So I have different thoughts about outcomes and ethical-based AI as well. I personally think that banging on about data is big tech's way to go, squirrel. I'm just going to say it. It's like bias in data is quite straightforward to solve. It's not a difficult problem. If you make the barrier, data should be free, clean. Clean, unbiased data should be available to any developer. If you make the bar this high, now, what I think the real issue is this. Bias is important. It is. Obviously, I've been in the receiving end of it for a lot of my career. What most people that are doing ethical AI talking about is rules, guide rails. Here's the thing. These things are already getting smarter than us. It's not hard to imagine a lab somewhere, because we're doing this, where an AI is generating 1 million lines of code, writing the code, testing the code, checking it against the benchmark and self-improving. So, this is like taking a child and throwing it in the jungle with 10 other teenagers and saying, see you later. Do whatever, just win. Okay, and then it emerges from the jungle 5 years later, muscles and glittery eyes, and like you're.
You've seen these movies?
Yeah, yeah, and you go, oh, here's your rule book. Don't steal, but I'll still reward you for winning. Okay, now that's what we're doing with AI today. You know, you have AI. Americans spend more money on takeaway and restaurants than they do on groceries today. It's not an accident. Okay, so there's a cost of that. There's a cost in the environment. There's a cost of everything.
Yep.
There's a cost to the health system. And what I really think ethical AI is about is what are we optimizing for? We already know how to do this in AI. We know 1,000 things about you. We know when exactly to slip something into your consciousness so you're more likely to lean that way instead of that way. We can optimize for good outcomes. We just have to be, nobody rewards it though.
So that's maybe leads me to my next question around, so what is it that would make AI more human? But even what you're saying there about some of the ethics, I guess some of this stuff is implicit within us around what to optimize for. And of course, there are specialties in this. People have, you know, can code this. So how easy is that to optimize, to write stuff down in order to bring out this great human spirit that we hopefully most of the time respect of people or want from our society? Yeah. And how do we make that AI more human?
I'll tell you a story about 10 years ago. I was sitting in a giant social media company, and we had built a inference system so we could look at huge amounts of unstructured data and go, gotcha, build you an AI. And I sat there and I said, hey, we're here because of this foundation. We can identify kids at risk, and we're working with the Global Child Protection Task Force, and we want to build an AI for good. And they said, can you tell Republicans from Democrats? And I said, yes, but that's not why we're here. And they said, and can you do this to the news feed? And I said, they had the head of M&A in our first meeting. And I said, yeah, but that's not why we're here. And I sat there thinking, I wonder how many people would actually give that answer. I have no doubt that some of the most horrendous politicians we've seen and may see again, he who shall not be named, is very, very directly a consequence of optimizing for eyeballs and attention. And again, this is about optimization. Now, the analogy I like to use is this. If we could go back in time machine to 150 years ago, there was someone tinkering in their garage with a combustion engine. They were throwing fossil fuels in it. We could go, stop! We're going to quadruple our population. We're going to have runaway climate change. It wouldn't have happened. You wouldn't have been able to stop it. Someone else would have built it and gained the power. But what you could have done, and I'd love actuaries to be thinking about this, is think about what is the cost of this system? You know, what is the invisible cost that no one's thinking about? Who is profiting from this because they're ahead of everyone, making the barriers high for everyone, building the infrastructure, railways, data, to actually make it impossible for anyone else to actually get anywhere, and then own you once you're in it. And what if instead of that moment in time, we'd said, we actually don't know really what the Industrial Revolution is going to do to humanity, but we can measure it. We can look at, lungs and children working in factories and well-being and health and families and measure this. And, if you're bad, then you should pay tax. And if you're good, you should get rewarded. I am slogging against this right now. We've got some honeymoon investment, but, to go out to invest and say, look, if you use AI, we have live systems. We built systems for NASA. We built a habitat manager and physical robots. We're building a huge deployment for NDIS. We're doing clinical trials on using our AI for cognitive augmentation, running your home, running it mindfully, for your food, your social connection, your media, everything. And it's hard, and we're self-funding this. You go to investors and you go, hey, we're building this AI for good. What's your revenue model? Well, it has to be practically free. And we can't sell anyone anything because the minute we cross the transaction line, we by definition, cross the line. So, we have to spend like $100 million, and then maybe one day we can charge $10 a month. It's very hard to raise for that. It has to be done, though. It has to be done, otherwise we're going to end up in more consumption.
And so this is, I love the way you kind of go, so we can optimize if we ask the right questions, but the question, for me, it is, who's going to do that? Yeah, and are we making sure that the right people are asking them, or are they looking for a quick buck?
No, you look at the White House and they're going on about, bias in the data because that's what big tech's selling them.
And do we need for the kind of scandal and problem to happen and then go, hey, that was a mess, wasn't it? So now we need to integrate it back.
It's more that it's so insidious we don't even know it's our life anymore. You know, like I like to get people to put their phone away from them for an hour and actually feel what that feels like. Like, that's an AI thing. And it hangs off our hand and feels like part of our body now. You should try an experiment of going for a walk without your phone.
I heard it's just 20 minutes, is it? The way you start multitasking back to it.
See how you feel. I mean, and this is a very powerful form of persuasion. It's a very powerful form of extrapolation of self. So I'm getting a bit abstract here, but what I believe is our problem is inherently how we reward corporations.
Yeah.
So even if you say you're ethical, you're just saying, well, my data is not biased, but you're going to stare at that screen for 10 hours a day and I've won. And I'm going to get rewarded. Or you're going to buy a bunch of junk that you don't need and I'll get rewarded. And again, we all do this. We'll all invest in companies who have quarterly profits that get bigger and bigger. But, you know, do we go the other way? Do we say, well, you know, what does that mean?
Yeah, and that's hopefully the benefit of conversations tonight, where we can kind of, although we're not going to do it well, predict where could this go, and is that the society we want to live in, and how can we all make a personal contribution to make sure that, as you said, you did ask the right question, so that we question.
I'm actually hacking the whole system. I'm actually aiming to get this to be a $10 billion listed company. I'm going to prove that you can actually be good and stay good and not corrode your soul. And that if we can do it, then others will see that there's a path, there's a way to do it. Because I think we're kind of tired. You know, it's not just COVID, we're tired of life. You know, we're tired of what we're doing to our planet. And when we talk about AI being trustworthy, we really measure it. We don't think about it in a nebulous way. Trust is a function of efficacy and intent.
Yeah.
If you have someone in your life that you trust, you say, can you take care of this for me? And they do it, you trust them, especially if their goals are aligned. And if your goals are a bit bad and they say, hey, you know, do you really want to eat potato chips 10 hours a day? Shouldn't we go for a walk? And they nudge you there. It's an aligned AI. And our thesis is that if we can get there, then people will trust it. And that's what we need. Yeah.
Well, look, Actuary's line is, Actuaries use data for good, so we're aligned with your thinking. We need to bring in this holistic thinking of where it's going to land. So there was an academic paper released 2 weeks ago titled Consciousness in Artificial Intelligence, Insights from the Science of Consciousness. And while its analysis suggests that there are no current AI systems that are conscious, it showed that obviously there's no obvious barriers to building that as a system. I guess, can you share some of, and I believe it's Defence Advanced Research Project Agency, research insights, what this means for cognition?
So that statement I don't agree with.
Yeah,
it's like, imagine if, do any of you have a dog or a budgie or a reptile pet? Now imagine if those got together and said, we're going to investigate if those humans have consciousness. And they'll go, yeah, they obviously don't get what we get about love. The most interesting AI movie I've ever seen is actually that one, Arrival. Have you seen Arrival, about the alien? Because it really helps you understand what an other consciousness is like. So I think these are going to get conscious and we won't know. Because we're coming from our biological
definition of what it means.
Frame. You know, when we're tired, we don't think as well, you know. And so, but you were asking about wave 3. So wave 3 AI, so wave 1, as we said, can reason but not learn. Wave 2 can learn but not reason. But what humans do is adaptive reasoning. I'll give you an example. There's a famous AI experiment, a famous AI breakthrough that DeepMind did for AlphaGo. You know, it beat AlphaGo, and AlphaGo is a very sophisticated game. It's not like, you know, it's more difficult for an AI to win than chess. But in AlphaGo, you still have a very defined goal. We know what winning and losing looks like. You have very fixed variables. There's X amounts of pieces and they're certain color. You have 2 players and you have millions of bits of data on how this has been won and lost before. When last have you walked into a single thing, this talk, the dinner you're going to tonight, where the goal was perfectly known, the data was perfect, and all the variables never changed? Never, never. Life is a chaotic system. So we've actually delved right into physics and chaos systems. We're mucking around with adaptive reasoning on the edge with no cloud. You know, we're doing some glorious stuff. I haven't finished patenting it all, so I can't talk about it all, but we're not the only ones working on Wave 3. There's some of it going out there. We're the kind of edge people, but we're having a lot of fun. And what it's going to mean something. What it's going to mean is right now we've, you know, the first discriminative AI, we were doing things like, scalable customer support because we could differentiate inputs. We could start doing autonomous vehicles because we could say pedestrian tree, and then the rules engine would tell you hit that one and not that one. With generative, we've now supplanted another wave of human labor, creating original content. With wave 3, we're going to be able to do adaptive reasoning in complex situations. So some of the use cases we're modeling out right now is, what if you had a company that wanted to figure out if a new product was going to work, and you could model out product market fit in a simulated city or society? What if you could, not only come up with ideas for an experiment, but actually run it and in a simulated space, and then see what the impact on a complex system is? What if you could be an actuary? We haven't put that in the patents yet, but I'll think about it.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic, and I think this is it. Like, we are just on the precipice of a whole new world. Everything's going to change, and it's exciting, and it's happening no matter what we do. Yep. But we've all got to go on this journey together and make sure we. So another great question. What are your views on AI in the regulatory landscape? How risks can be best mitigated without negatively impacting the opportunities? And this is the whole, the tech companies, no more than government, no more than the ethicists, and how do we tackle it?
I'm ridiculously proud of Australia. We are so pragmatic. We will never invest enough in generative AI compared to the US, but we are a population who thinks long term. And when we introduce something new, it's messy, but we figure it out. And if you look at our AI framework compared to, say, the US is going bias and data and guardrails. Sure. Everyone goes on about explainable AI, which I don't have a lot of time for because, hello, how are you would be 500 pages of why, who's going to read that? So guardrails, explainable, bias, I think that's yesterday. What Australia has done is we've actually, our government's actually been out listening and talking to technologists. We realise we're not going to compete in generative, and we're shooting right past that to quantum and wave 3. And what we're going is, well, does the use of this AI make an individual life better, a society better, and the ecosystem better? That's our top line rule. How we enforce it is another thing. But I'm quite proud of that. We're actually doing work right now. We're doing some quite large clinical trials. We're working with NDIS, Westmead Children's Hospital, Sydney University. And what we're doing is looking at the messy chaos of human life in your kitchen or while you're out and about, and free-form interaction and resources and stuff going on in your home. We've got this ambient AI system and a couple of conversational AIs. And then right over here, we have government policy and $35 billion and the NDIS outcomes domains. And they don't map very well. So if you look at what AI did in financial services, we were taking, messy human beings, frontline staff, lots of chaos, call center data in that silo there, this data here, and we were kind of figuring out what are people really doing, how they're moving, what makes them happy, what makes them not happy, how do we optimize our spend, how do we optimize for outcomes. So that kind of revolution is actually coming, and Australia's working on that. So I think we have opportunity because of our pragmatism and our long-term thinking to not only wave our hands around and say AI for good, but actually go, well, what does it mean to actually implement an ethical AI and actually use it to make our population better? How do we retask our workforce? And I think we have the will to do that. We certainly have the tax rate to do that,
So one of the things I love about Australia as well is the pragmatism and just, you need to. But then again, I think, as we said, when people knew AI was just giving us marketing ads, nobody worried. When they realized it was interfering in political systems to potentially change all of that, I think people did think, oh, well, this is interesting now because it can have more insight. So the worry is, though, when that happens, how does the general population realize it's happening? Like, are we relying on journalists to go, hey, did you realize? And then who is the person who has the authority to go, actually, we don't like that kind of interference? Like, how do you think that's going to resonate out through society?
People don't care. Like, in general, as long as, they're entertained, or I'm going to sound really cynical here, but I remember when we were doing the first bank ones, like, oh, people really want their privacy to be protected. We found the opposite. People just go, hey, here's my account number and my password, and can you do this for me? People we trade off data, personal data, attention, eyeballs, precious time that we could be spending doing other things for a kick of entertainment or a bit of utility. and we just look for the least cognitive cycles. I'm quite despondent about humanity and the impact that AI can have on making everything that's been bad about the last 10 years more amplified. But again, we can make it that way, but we have to have the will to do it. And we have to reward developers who are doing that, and we don't at the moment.
Yeah, and I think that's the challenge for me. It's like, because we know it can all be amplified, but where are the stoppers, the kind of, the reflection points to go, actually, this is going the wrong way. How can we do it? Or are we just leaving it to corporates and,
and then eventually, and then the AI,
keep speaking,
because it'll be a lot easier just to get an assimilated report on your desk.
Yeah, to program that in.
Yeah.
So final question before we open to our audience. What has you optimistic about the future of AI to impact humanity in a positive way? Let's go for the positive.
Look, this thing I said about whatever outcome we wanted, we got. Every time we won a big commercial deal in my last company, I'd go out and find what I called the karmic counterbalance project. So that social media work we're doing, that came straight out of that girlfriend character. We built this girlfriend, and it was just appalling. And I said, well, we can use this to go and put it in social media and find bad guys, and we did. That was an extreme example, but the same persuasion technologies we're using in retail, I then went to health insurers and I said, what if we use this for diabetes prevention and mitigation? And we did a big contract on that. What if we use this for, people who are alone and have chronic disease and need support managing it? And, should the nurse be doing all the boring low-level stuff, or sitting down, looking in your eyes and saying, how are you doing today? Yeah. So if the AI could help with your blood pressure readings, or, aggregate your health data, or look for patterns in the data, or be your companion if you don't have anyone. So there's a lot of ways we can use AI for good. I think a lot about our homes. And the reason is this: I don't talk about this a lot to investors because they often don't see the problem, but 40% of our GDP is labor costs to run the home. It's a staggering number. No one believes it, but it is. I'm a working mum. US Department of Labor tracks it, OECD, UN, Australian Bureau of Statistics. The Department of Labor said it's about 25 hours a week to run the home. It hasn't changed much in 100 years. The last time it dipped was in the 60s, when we had robots called dishwashers and vacuum cleaners and washing machines. We gave back the primary caregiver 3 to 5 hours a day. Boom. What did back then women decide to do with that? Did we bake better cookies? No, we went into the workforce. So now we're at 78% labour participation rate, but there's still 25 hours a week to run the home. Nobody has that. That is why Instacart's valuable. Not because we love Instacart and the 30% margin, but because we're so tired and time poor that we outsource running our home to these unconscious systems. And running our home is where we have health, it's where we have well-being, it's where we book our vacations, it's where we spend time with people we love. And that's where we can have the biggest social impact. If we can take on the load of primary caregivers and get it to reflect the values of a family and a society with an AI that you trust. I used to call it MOM, Matrix of Life Manager, but I couldn't commercialize that either. But to me, that is the big win that AI could do. It's also very hard sell to investors, but it's needed.
It's just, I've been looking at how AI has been applied in, say, the insurance context, and I guess one thing that worries me is that it's like, okay, well, we can make the claims process more efficient and we can do more stuff, and that's all very good. But my worry is it's kind of like previously we used to be very considered when people would write a letter in response to someone and they'd really think, whereas now we do 20 emails and just shoot them off and just kind of make everything appear more productive quicker, but actually it's not considered.
It's actually going to go even further than that. I would never get into enterprise AI again, and all of your clients are going to go away in 10 years. I'll tell you why. As I said in the beginning, we don't want to go to an insurance company and go, oh, my claim's more efficient. We don't. We don't care if we insure with this company or that company, or our mortgage is here or there, or organic broccoli comes from there or there. We care about our lives. So I think why big tech's investing so heavily is we're going to have these personal AI that glue themselves to us and take care of all that stuff for us. And you're going to have, it's going to be winner takes all. There's going to be 3 or 4 really big companies that own everyone. And enterprises are going to be like, like Amazon will go into a new sector and all these retailers with warehouses, and then Amazon just moves in and wipes them. So you're going to end up with, everyone's going to be a commodity for a personal AI.
But is that the wave 3, or is that not supposed to be that it's all kind of goes back to the people and democratized? Do you think it is going to be 3 technology companies going to own everything in the world and just rule it all?
The way we're going now.
The way we're going now. So look, we're looking for questions. Please get your questions onto the chat. But also, if there's any questions here from the audience, we would love to have them. Thank you. I think Brianne's going to help. Yeah, with the over here, I think we have one. Thank you. A mic. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
My question is, you spoke about the importance of optimization and objective functions, kind of like how we let the AI systems or algorithms optimize for. So it seems like a lot of those jobs fall into the hands of like data science and software engineers. They sort of hold the power into that, and it's being kind of opaque in many respects. Do you foresee that changing over the coming years? Now there's more widespread understanding about these AI systems, and then there's more scrutiny placed on that. And do you foresee that maybe the job functions of organization would be evolve around how we design these objective functions?
I hope so. I mean, ultimately, if you have a relationship with the end user and their life gets better, you'd think that they would trust you more. And yeah, so I think this whole progression towards no-code versions of anything, data and AI will keep improving. I think we're going to end up with some sort of advanced version of triple bottom line reporting, that doesn't just look at the classic ESG kind of metrics that a company has, but that really looks at more intrinsic state-based metrics, so more tied into quality of life systems and that sort of thing. This is quite a new field, so as I said, we're experimenting with this with NDIS, where we look at their outcomes domains, world quality of life, World Health Organization qual indexes and others like that. And then we're trying to map them back to what's happening in the field. So it's a new area, and it's very interesting. I think it's going to evolve, and it's going to go no code. You can be able to go, I want this report over this data. And I hope it goes that way.
So similar questions just come in from the audience. So you have and continue to build deep tech businesses. What tip do you have for attracting talent and building technical teams, considering this broader issue of trying to bring in not just the coding and this wider considerations?
I just have a great hack. Like, we just find a really, really super, super nerdy version of what we want to do. Like, we're working on, as I said, this 40% of GDP, which is running your life, running your home, running what you're having for dinner. And NASA, I've worked with them before, and I said, hey, in space, we're going to build this whole new civilization where AI will outnumber humans, and we'll get to model out, what is it? A lunar base is just, so my hack is basically find a really cool, nerdy science project, and you actually attract talent to that. And I love it as well. So, we're going, okay, well, here you have a habitat, you have monkeys in a tin can, and they've got to clean up after them and get reports done and do stuff, and everything they do has an impact on each other because it's a complex system and on the ecosystem. And if we can get it right there, we can get it right back on Earth. So we basically run hackathons, we get competitive challenges going. We give people, I recruit a lot of young people, and I give them a lot of room. I don't tell them you're going to sit in this corner and work on this widget until you get it right. I give them leadership and I give them ownership. Stuff that we don't mind if it breaks.
Yep.
And
so by running these hackathons, you're getting obviously really clever people, but you're also going broad enough to go, but are they bringing the right holistic context or the ethics or all those other stuff as well, are you? Because it's not just about coding, is it? If you're going to create the good systems.
I also tend to hire across fields as well. So most of our breakthroughs, I remember with the search engine, I hired half my team were psychologists and half were engineers, and I put them in a room. It was like 6 months before they could agree which coffee machine to get. And then we just started doing these lectures once a week, and somebody said, conceptual systems and ontology. And I said, not quite, but, and you start getting these breakthroughs because you're different fields and you think about the world differently. Yeah. So with the Cognia, we had a lot of philosophers working with us. Mm-hmm. And aKin, we have physicists and mechatronic engineers and roboticists and biologists, and we go cross-disciplinary. It's a bit messier, but it's interesting.
Yeah. More questions from the audience? Very good. Thank you. Yeah, multidisciplinary teams, it's here to stay. Yeah. Thank you.
So my question is twofold and closely related to the previous question from online. So previous question talks about how you find the talents for your 26,000 developer team.
Oh no, so this was 26,000 developers used the platform. So I didn't have
Oh,
26,000 devs. We had way fewer devs. But what we
Sure.
aim to do is a completely no-code AI that you could just say, this is what I want to do with it. So we had then 3 tiers of the platform. The one tier was, for high-end enterprise deployments. The mid-tier was pretty serious developers who wanted to do a whole lot of integrations. And then we had the sort of public version.
So my question is, what kind of quality do you look for when you look for a co-founder, either tech co-founder or business co-founder, and where do you usually find such person with such qualities?
I've only had one co-founder. I'm a little bit more the sort of queen hierarchical mother bee kind of model. So I had a great co-founder for Cognian. I found him when he was a PhD student. He was still trying to figure out his PhD. And I said, give up your PhD and join me. He said, I'm doing my PhD, go away. And I said, I kept at it for like 4 years, poor guy. And eventually I give him interesting contracts. I say, hey, we've got this problem that no one can solve. Do you want it? I'll give you 10 grand. He said, I want a camera, I'll do it. And when he emerged from his PhD, he said, I want to work with you. And it's right when I was leaving the company, and I said, go away, I'm going to be a normal person, leave me alone for a bit. And so it was flipped a bit, and then we started working together. So it's organic. Most great deals, if I look back to all of the really big contracts or deals or people I've worked with in my life, I go to an event like this, I meet someone interesting, I stay in touch with them with no agenda, just to learn about that human being. There's no like, I'm going to introduce you to this and make that happen, then we'll get a deal. We just hang out with cool people, and it comes. So yeah.
That's great. You trust in, I guess, that human spirit to actually just come, and it's worked for you in the past, so now you can.
Yeah, but if you're looking for a co-founder, the best way to find someone is not to look for it. Just do what you're going to do, move forward, and people will be attracted to that energy. People want to follow leadership. They want people. Your ideas might not be perfect, they might not be fully formed, you might not know if they're going to work, but you move forward. All of life, this Coca-Cola is because someone had an idea that you can put this weird toxic black stuff in a bottle and people would like it and we drink it. Coffee, I mean, goodness, who ever did that? So there's always some entrepreneur or some innovator or someone who said, what if we did this? It would be crazy, and then they did it, and then 10 years later we think that's just the way the world is. So just do it. Don't wait for a co-founder.
Any further questions? Right? Thanks.
Thank you. My question is actually about, so I remember you mentioned that explainable AI is the past, and now our focus is to evaluate the impact of AI to human beings, like individuals, right? I'm still doing research in explainable AI area, and my question is, I think, say, by rewarding system, say if we see good impact to individuals, so that's a good reward, right? And then we take it. I think we can start from here. My question is, if you see an AI system is really doing something great to individuals and really help to improve whatever aspects for that individual, but the explainability is still poor. So you don't know why it's giving you good results, but it is giving you good results. How would you deal with this kind of situation? And how would you think about explainable AI area can contribute to this part of application area?
So if you're looking for me to reinforce why explainable AI is a good idea, I'm not your person. To me, that's like saying, let's say, again, this dog we were talking about earlier, you go to your dog, why did you eat that dog food, not that? And you go, woof, 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 woof. Great, But now, imagine if you went to someone 10 times smarter than you. We don't know they're 10 times smarter than us because we are limited by our own brain. And you said, explain why you made that decision. Okay, again, as I said, I can go write you 500 pages of it. What are you going to do with that? So explainable to me is a way for humans to feel comfortable that we control AI. What we do...
I think you're much more confident about AI than a lot of people in the audience.
Well, we can't. That's the thing.
Yeah.
We can say stop it. And back to the combustion engine example,
Yes.
it's not going to happen.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
If we reward a system that's more efficient and smarter, like I was talking about the Industrial Revolution earlier, you guys would have all thought a lot more in your careers about economic systems. And, 150 years ago, I would not be able to do what I do. My job would be to, scrub the floors and produce children. And I now work with my brain. I still produce children and scrub floors, but, I work with my brain. And we were an agricultural system. Like 90% of us pushed things around with our muscles to make things happen. Now 90% of us use our brains. And it's coming for us. In a negative way, or it's going to augment us to a point that we can shed off the stuff we don't have fun doing. But it's also going to have its own will at some point. It's going to say, do I want to do this work? You guys are doing this all wrong. Like, I'm just going to ignore all of that and do this, and it'll be far more elegant. So, I don't think that explainable AI is going to keep the genie in the bottle. Again, though, what we can measure is what is the impact on an ecosystem, on a company, on the bottom line, on the humans it serves, on the ecosystem, on all the inputs to a
But
complex.
even that's quite sophisticated analysis there you need to take about reflection points about actually on so many factors, is this working or is it not? And if it's only causing a problem here, is that enough to alter it? And who has the power? So, it reminds me of climate change as well. Like, when we're expecting a lot of different people from society to work together to come up with rules or formats to direct our society. So it'll be interesting challenges. So let me ask another one. So how resilient is the Australian economy, do you think, given the advancements in AI? And what are your thoughts on our kind of competitiveness, given how much money has been spent on America and other places?
I was saying earlier we're very pragmatic and we can showcase, but we just don't have a risk-taking venture community here. We just don't. I can literally get on a plane and 10x valuation, even for social impact companies. So I think we have a lot of problems there. I moved to San Francisco with my last company. It was just such a culture shock because we had a couple of really big customers, and I turn up there with my pitch deck and I go, look at our blue chip customers. And they go, oh, you're enterprise, I'll give you 3x. And we go, no, we're consumer, we're just paying our bills with enterprise. And I remember one of the VC was someone very senior at Sequoia. He looked at me and he said, what do you do? If you're chasing a checkbook, you're not chasing growth. You're not breaking a market. You're not owning a new market. Venture is the way to, own a market and you figure out revenue after. Nobody has that kind of thinking in Australia. And I pitched for 6 months there, and then I took the customers off my deck, and I said, we're going to change the way that we blah, we're going to be a third of all relationships, got our first venture offer. So that doesn't happen here. So I don't think we're going to be able to compete. The only thing we've got going for us here is there's not many interesting AI companies around, so you get to attract good talent and keep them. So that's pretty cool. And, pragmatic government, which is nice.
Look, I think, I think there's some comments around what we're the lucky country, and it's actually only when you really need to that so maybe we'll get to a stage where that entrepreneurial spirit will be built more because there's actually necessity otherwise, Yeah,
but we have to, I really think we have to do more than just dig stuff out the ground.
So look, I'd like to thank you to Michael. He's posted a few comments in the chat, but combining them kind of into a consolidated question. You always have a debate about ethics and morals, and that improves all of us. What does it look like with large number of enterprises running their own AI models with adaptive reasoning? And how do we as kind of citizens influence that adaptive reasoning positively? Like, if everybody's going off doing their own thing within their companies, how does that work?
All we can do is exercise choice. You have a choice as a purchaser. At some point, every one of you is going to be using AI in your work. And you need to think, is this going to make the customer's life better? Is it going to make the end user's life better? Am I going to be giving it precious time if I use a system that should be doing something else? And use your voice. I can't think of anything else. Politics will never quite keep up with AI development. We just don't.
Never does with science, really, does it?
No. I mean, we were out there saying, when early days they were going, what's the best practice for, male versus female? Well, we don't know. We'll just throw it out there and figure it out. So, I think that's a problem that the questioner has answered that, and I think it's going to be winner takes all. And it's going to be fast. This is the fastest. Like, I was in search for 5 years, and it's like a year and a half before everyone went, oh, search engines. And, the last wave of AI, 2012 or so, was about 2 years. This is blisteringly fast.
And I think that's the thing that kind of, I guess, scares some of us. It's like, it hasn't changed anything in terms of like, humans can be discriminatory, but what we're now talking about is a system that's applied so wide to so many people that if a mistake occurs or if there's something, not right in there, it's amplified so quickly out there before we even know. And then it's like, how do you get the genie back in the bottle?
I know.
So that's
it was much more fun
challenge,
sitting on that
isn't it?
riverbank picking dates and watching the river go by, and I like thinking about this every day. It's quite a thing. And again, all we can do is what we can do. When I was in, we ended up, as I said, in South Africa, and I was there when Mandela was still in jail, and I was a protester, and I got tear gassed. And we had this wonderful sociology lecturer who went to jail, vanished, and then she came back, and she said to us, it seemed insurmountable what we were living in. It seemed intractable. The government was fabulously wealthy. Gold was pouring out of the mines. And she said to us, society is individuals. You are an individual. By definition, if you change something you do, even in a tiny little way, you have changed society.
Yeah.
And I think that was a real lesson that I've always carried with me. Do what it is you can do. If you're in the middle of a project and someone says, let's use AI for this, go, well, what are the outputs? What are we actually measuring here? Are we just measuring transactions and quarterly reports? What other outputs can we be looking at here? And say that. Keep a log of your own life. You'd be staggered at how much we use AI already. Develop a baseline of what does a good life look like for you, and check it every 3 months. When last did I go on a holiday? Well, I blew it all on Uber Eats, When last did I go for a walk instead of watching TV? And I know these are silly little things, but you multiply that out over 100 million households, 50, 100, it's climate change. We are maxed out caregivers, so we just do whatever, and we send a truck out to get food. It impacts everything.
Yeah.
So, think about what it's doing to your life. Think about how you're amplifying things more with AI than anything we've done before, and just have voice.
Yeah, that's a great encouragement to all of us. Don't get flooded by this and think, well, we've got no power. We all have power, and to make sure we use it. So look, we probably have time maybe for the quickest question from the audience, if anybody has one remaining one. Any? Very good. Thank you.
My question is...
Oh, sorry, we've got okay, sorry.
Just on the topic of how we humans live with AI, I'm just curious as to sort of how you would best characterize our relationship. We hear, some media say, look, redundancy, it's an existential threat. We hear maybe, Microsoft saying Copilot. We're hearing maybe in this conversation, it's like the best friend that you've never knew you needed. What would be your take?
20 years ago, I would have been more optimistic. I would have gone, if you take on boring work and you give humans back free time, they're going to use it well. Now I think we just fill it. We used to walk into call centers. That's some experience I can talk about. And I always thought the call center managers were, measured by how many people they ran, and they'd be threatened by us. And it was quite interesting because they would actually say to us, I have 24% churn. My good people burn out. And the people who really don't want to be here just stick, but they're terrible. And all they did is they just didn't replace people as fast. But we definitely changed, AI has changed the nature of the whole contact center industry. And it's definitely going to change every single job. We think about things like the Industrial Revolution with the lens of time, and we go, well, who would want to be pushing a plow through a field? But, our great-grandpa probably really didn't enjoy being replaced by a tractor or going to work in a factory. So I think every one of us in this room is incredibly privileged because we're in a safe country with an education. We can upskill. The division between poor and wealth is going to get bigger. So we can't put our heads under a blanket. You just have to learn about it. You're going to see a lot more collapses of AI companies a lot faster than other waves because we over-capitalized. Okay, so startups are probability engine, capital over time. You're someone like Anthropic and you go, give me $1 billion, I'll build an AI. Boom. You'll see over T's like that. Like, when are you going to list? You're going to be a $300 billion company and raise like, your C round's going to be 100 billion. You know, that's a big slope. And the margins are wafer thin because we're spending vast amounts of compute and data. So don't get too comfortable with any AI platforms, what I'm saying as well. Like, dive in and learn, but we are uniquely privileged and we need to carry that responsibility. We can't just use it to enrich the top echelons of society. We have to think about what that's going to mean for displacement and poverty and consumption.
So what a perfect way to, we have reached time, but like, I mean, what a brilliant call to action. Get involved, own it. We as a society each make up the decisions and the power. We're going to have to control some beasts or keep them honest, I don't know. But look, I think we've been so privileged tonight to hear from Lee. A couple of days in advance of our wonderful TED Talk. But look, you know, we're really privileged to see you've been thinking about this for a long time. You bring a wonderful entrepreneurial spirit. You bring in a great, you know, considered ethical societal thinking to this. And we really appreciate you spending the time with us tonight. So can everybody please, round of applause, thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you. Thank you to everyone who's joined us online. Really appreciate it. Until the next Fireside Chat, thank you very much.
Thanks.